It seems like almost every day in the Facebook group, it happened again today, we see someone talking about, what do I do because my parent is so narcissistic and it's hard to deal with?
Can be a little bit confusing. We decided to bring in an expert. Patty Monical of Just Mind Counseling is with us. And I think that term narcissism gets thrown around a lot. So why don't we start with sort of what it really is?
Okay, hi, good to be here. Narcissism is really mostly what I've heard about it more recently is that narcissism really exists on a spectrum.
Hmm.
Uh, you can be kind of a mild narcissist and just have some mean behaviors that make people feel bad. Lack of empathy is one of the main things that shows up in any narcissistic personality. Uh, there and on the far end of the extreme is someone who would meet criteria for narcissistic personality disorder,
Mm-hmm.
which is a diagnosis in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health. So, and they have to meet several criteria, but basically anyone with narcissistic behaviors is probably going to be someone who generally lacks empathy, like I said, uh, can be very dismissive of ideas or other people's opinions or experiences, can communicate with a lot of shame, especially to their children. They can also, on the other side of that, be completely charming and charismatic and
Mm-hmm.
present a persona to the community that is admirable and people, they might be a philanthropist or someone who volunteers a lot, and they kind of are really into self promotion. So there's that
Mm-hmm.
grandiosity as well. It's a tricky set of behaviors, especially to grow up with. And
Mm-hmm.
I've had clients who have had narcissistic parents who need a lot of trauma resolution, or at the very least, a lot of deep healing work in their adult years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's tough.
Mm-hmm.
And whether your parent is a true narcissist or just has those narcissistic traits, you have to cope in certain ways. And I know that self care is a big reason, that big thing that you have to do.
Self care is also a phrase that gets tossed around, and
Mm-hmm.
for some people has become somewhat of a tired cliche.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's been overused. I focus on self care so much with my clients, no matter what they're dealing with, because that really is the foundation of mental health and well being. Um, there are other things involved as well, but self care is really about a mindset. It's more than getting regular manicures and pedicures and treating yourself to a bubble bath and a glass of champagne. It's a mindset of, I deserve goodness. I deserve to be treated well. I deserve to have clear boundaries and that are respected by the people around me. So it's more of a mindset of deservedness, which speaks of self-worth and self-compassion.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
you are the adult child of of a parent who has these narcissistic tendencies, and this is likely, as you mentioned, something that you've dealt with your whole life, and maybe you've gone off and done your own thing for a while, and been on your own, and now are back in the position of really trying to step in and care for your parent, where maybe they're living with you or you're living with them, and or just a lot more of needed contact. How do you manage that, as now I'm an adult and yet I still have this parent who makes me feel bad sometimes?
Yeah, it's tough. It's tough enough caring for an aging parent and being thrust, in when the roles reverse, the parent-child roles reverse. Add in narcissism, and that makes it even more challenging. Hopefully, an adult child who finds themselves in that position has educated themselves about narcissism and the best ways to kind of protect themselves from narcissistic behavior and abuse. If that hasn't happened by the time they get to the age where they're caring for their parents, a big learning curve.
Mm-hmm.
But so my first suggestion for anybody in that position would be to educate yourself, even if you're already educated about
Mm-hmm.
narcissism. Get more education. There are lots of resources out there, lots of books and podcasts. And one woman that I have followed in the last several years is Dr. Ramani. She's a clinical psychologist. She has a very popular YouTube channel, and she's the real deal.
Mm-hmm.
She's amazing. So I've learned a lot from her, as well as from my clients
Mm-hmm.
who educate me about what it's like to grow up in a family with narcissistic parents.
So how do you respond, when your parent is either saying, because I think that we hear some of that what you mentioned, that they're lovely when they're out in public and they're treating other people really nicely. It's just when it comes to their family, it's like they become a different person. How do you handle it when they might be saying, you don't do enough, or I expect you to do this, or you're not good enough, or all of those kinds of things? It makes you feel like you're 12 again, probably. But how do you manage that? How do you know what you can do and what maybe you can't do? When do you step away? When do you step in?
Well, that's really important. I think the most important thing is to not take those things personally as the adult child caregiver, because it's not personal. It's about them. It's not about you. One of the hardest things to get your mind around, because it sure feels personal.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where that mindset of self-care comes in as well. Just know that it's not about you. Have clear, firm boundaries. If you need to say something like, I'm not, when you talk to me that way, I'm going to leave.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good boundary. You're not going to change them, most
Mm-hmm.
likely. And as narcissistic parents age, it's very likely, not always, but very likely, that their behaviors will become exaggerated. They'll get worse.
Mm-hmm.
And even more challenging to deal with, which is a real downer.
Mm-hmm.
But the caregiver really will benefit from equipping themselves with knowing what their boundaries are, knowing how they're going to communicate those, because it's all about taking care of the self.
Mm-hmm.
And having a good support network is paramount.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of ways to do that. If you don't have friends and family that will offer support, there are lots of community resources. There are things, national organizations like the Alzheimer's Association. There are adult daycares specifically for handling narcissistic parents. Several of my clients have let me know that adult children of alcoholics and dysfunctional families, they've renamed it because it's not always about alcoholism. It's about growing up in a dysfunctional family, and has been extremely helpful because it's a group process of reparenting, compassionately reparenting yourself after a lifetime of being parented by someone who's not compassionate.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So in some ways, what I'm hearing you say is that you have to develop sort of that thick skin but not just where you just can't take it personally, which I know easy to say, so hard to do, right? But just really having to lean into, it's not about me, it's about them. And so how can I just like literally make that come in my ears and right back out? Is that kind of what I'm almost hearing, is just how do you make it so that it doesn't stick in your brain and really impact you?
Yeah. That's it. Just there's a term that's used in narcissism, dealing with a narcissist, called gray rocking. And that really means not having any kind of emotional reaction to what a narcissist does or says. Because if you do react, that's what's called narcissistic supply, right? They want you to react. They feed on that. When you don't react, it
loses its power.
It loses its power.
Yeah.
So becoming becoming indifferent,
Mhm.
or at least faking indifference until you can get out of the environment where they are, and then do your own healing process, whatever that is, self-soothing, regulating the nervous system, calling on a friend,
Mhm.
engaging in some kind of creative endeavor, perhaps physical exercise. Those are kind of the ways to complete the stress cycle that can
Yeah.
be instigated by being in the presence of a narcissistic parent.
And what was the name of that term again that you mentioned?
Completing the stress cycle.
The gray something
Oh,
rocking.
gray rocking.
Okay.
Gray rocking,
Gray rock.
right?
Okay, got
You
it.
just become like a gray rock. You don't
Oh,
have
okay.
any.
Yeah, that makes
Okay,
sense.
yeah, okay. That visual image is helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
It
Great.
is, isn't it? Yeah, yeah.
It's funny because the way you're describing things, it kind of reminds me of your days in middle school and high school when you want to be one of the cool people and you just can't quite figure out how to do it. And it's kind of like this because you see so many people who have narcissistic trait parents who it doesn't bother me. Goes in one ear out the other, and other people are like, no, it's driving me crazy. And you want to figure out how can I be like that guy or that girl.
Mhm.
And I think it's hard for a lot of people to figure out how to get over that hump. Does it help if we, besides talking to a counselor, to talk to friends or family who it doesn't bother and figure out how they handle it? See if we can try to emulate that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, like you said, Mike, it's being bullied. A
Yeah.
narcissist is a bully.
Mhm.
And so anything, since bullying has been a huge topic of education for elementary, middle school, and high schoolers, it's good for adult children of narcissists to draw upon what they learned about how to deal with a bully.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Some of those things will work, some of them won't. When you're caring for a narcissistic parent, though, that changes the landscape
Yeah.
of the relationship, obviously. When you must be there and they are dependent on you to be there, but they're still treating you like a bully would treat you, that makes it even more complicated and challenging. So the self-care, just all the self-care strategies, the seeking support, making use of all the resources you can possibly find are the need for those is exaggerated.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it is just so hard to feel like I'm doing everything that I can for you, and I don't want to walk away because it'll make me feel guilty if I don't help you.
Mhm.
Yet you're not being nice to me, so you're not making me want to be able to help you.
I feel like I'm
but I
doing
feel
things
like
the
I
right
need-
way,
Right.
but I'm not being rewarded.
So
for it.
so it could create
Yeah.
some guilt, I think, too.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's a good segue to what I was going to mention too. Radical acceptance of the situation is a really important approach, and something a professional mental health counselor can really help with. Leaning on, if you have a spiritual belief, a spiritual community, leaning on that community and making sense of it through the lens of your own spirituality is really important. And forgiveness, which is important in all the spiritual belief systems that I know of. And forgiveness is not about them, it's about you. Letting go of the idea that things could have been any different.
Yeah.
And so forgiveness is paramount as well. And it's a process. You have to be ready for it, but there are lots of ways that a professional counselor can help with that process.
Because it sounds like so much of what you're dealing with is how do you handle it? What does it affect? How does it affect you? What does it mean to you, even no matter what it is that they're doing?
Yeah, exactly. It is. It's all about you.
Yeah.
It's not about them. Sure feels like it is about them, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Patty, as we said at the beginning, there are so many people I think who are bothered, affected, however you want to describe it, by this. And I think you've helped so many people just with this little bit of advice and some tips that you've shared. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure.
Thank you. I think what we've learned from this is that you've got to communicate. Again,
Mhm.
you've got to talk to people, whether it's to a counselor, friends, family, and just figure out what's best for you, because we're all different.
Mhm.
So we got to figure out what's best for you to be able to handle this
Mhm.
situation.
Mhm.
And it's not that easy.
Absolutely. And lean on the community, lean on
Mhm.
the people that you know are going through it, or even the people that just you can bounce ideas off to find out, hey, is this normal?
Yeah.
Mom keeps saying this to me. Is that normal? I don't think so.
Yeah.
To be able to have that just support and encouragement to keep going.
Remember, if there's any topic you'd like us to discuss, please let us know. Parenting aging parents.